Let's talk football and turn our attention to Nigeria's national football team, the Super Eagles, and the latest development that has ignited debates across the country. After months of speculation, the Nigerian Football Federation, NFF, has named Eric Chelle as the new head coach of the Super Eagles. The former Mali national team coach steps into the spotlight, tasked with leading Nigeria through the rest of the 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifiers and the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations. While Chelle's appointment has drawn mixed reactions from fans and pundits alike, his record offers both promise and questions. With a history of dynamic tactics and a preference for attacking football, will he be the one to unlock the full potential of Nigeria's talented roster?
No, we're going to find out. But joining us today, two insightful analysts, Ezugwu Chukwudi, also known as husband material broadcaster and digital content creator. He's joining us live in the studio here, and Dafe Otite, a sports journalist and analyst specializing in African football. Let's start by looking at the highlights of Eric Chelle's coaching career and what his appointment means for Nigerian football. Thank you both for joining us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dafe, for joining us.
Indeed. So, thank you. Dafe, let me start with you, Dafe. The highlights of Chelle's career, what would you say they are, and how can they be applied in the system that he is stepping into now, barring any frustration? I'm sorry, forget that last part. Well, go ahead.
No, I think if you're looking for a highlight, when you look at his work with Mali, he's taken them further than they've ever been. Not ever. They've taken him further than they've ever been in the last 10 years, for example. When you look at Mali in AFCON, they've typically, I think previously they've come third, they've come fourth, but that was pre-2013. After 2013, they've typically come out after the round of 16 or not even qualified for the quarterfinals. And this last year is the first time they got to the last 8 of AFCON. So that will be a highlight, and that is a positive. Mali, yes, may not be one of the powerhouses of West African football, but they have ambition, and every once in a while they have a good team. He has taken them further. Since 2013, yes, we've won the AFCON, but come close since then. So it's looking for somebody who can get that little bit more out of the squad, out of the team, and will he do it? It's up to anyone's guess.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I'm going to come back in the studio here. Chukwudi, let's talk about his achievements in terms of the fact that we always meet Mali at the AFCON matches. And we always get, well, hang on a second, we always beat Mali except the one time. And the one time when they beat Nigeria is the fact that Chelle here was the coach. Do you think that has anything to do with his appointment?
I don't think it has anything to do with his appointment. I think for the NFF, it's essentially about getting a manager that has the quality, looking at the array of stars that we have in the Super Eagles of Nigeria, and essentially somebody who they can afford to pay. I think that is just what influenced that decision, because there are a couple of very great managers who have done really well with African teams on the continent, but they cannot afford to pay those guys. That I'm sure influenced the reason to opt for Eric. And I think we were not ready. We were not ready. If we want to, take a holistic view of our situation right now and provide solutions to the challenges that we are faced with, look at the quality of stars that we have on parade. But it would appear like you take 10 steps forward and you take 20 steps backwards. This is the team that featured in the finals of the AFCON. Although a lot of people were not expectant when the competition started, but looking at the quality of our play and how the guys gave their best, a lot of Nigerians were hopeful. But it would appear like every year we show that spark, and thereafter we go back to discussing our problems and thinking of what to do. I think that what we should just do is go back to the drawing board. I mean, the appointment has been made already, but we need to go back to the drawing board and tell ourselves that if it will take us 10 years to develop our football, we would be willing to make that sacrifice. I think months from now we are still going to come back here and discuss the problems with Coach Eric, and that's because a lot of Nigerians are expectant. We want to qualify for the World Cup, and it will be nothing short of a miracle to qualify from the position that we find ourselves in right now. And afterwards, what next? We'll come back and say, oh, maybe we need to, if we had, and we go back to discussing the problems again. So I think for now, it's just a new manager. Try as much as you can to see if you can stabilize the team, and thereafter we'll go back to the same problems.
Also, Material, you need to understand that we're very religious people, and we believe that we'll pray it out. Anything can happen. Please, let's have faith. But let me come to you, Dafe, and just Husband Material raised some very, very solid points, right? And most importantly, he talked about the team in and of itself and how our roster is filled with very talented players. Now, Eric's style is known to be attack football and very flexible strategies. Do you see this in an advantage position, him now coaching this team? Will he be able to wield that to the type of play that we see with the Super Eagles?
Yeah, we have one of the most fearsome attacking players on the continent, and to have an attacking manager, it only bodes well for the team. However, the issue, I agree with a lot of what Nedu said, with us getting coaches that we can afford. And when you look at it, all of the coaches that we have had, we've had, 5 coaches in the last 4 years. That is not stability. That is just us jumping from one fire to the other. Will he do well? We always look for a coach that has potential. When we employed Raw, he hadn't won anything previously. When we went to Pesero, okay, yes, Pesero had won in Portugal, in Egypt. He had won things, and we didn't give him the time that he required. We also looked at Finidi Eguavon. So it's a lot of trial and error that we've been doing. And until we stick to one thing, one person, if we give this man enough time to bed in, and we allow him to do his work, choose the players that he wants, choose the first thing that he wants, because we always hear sound bites from NFF officials or ex-NFF officials talking about having slots. This is my player, this player must be in. If he's allowed the free rein to choose his players, choose his tactics, and give him the time, then there's a likelihood that we make that one step that we failed last time. The flip side to that is, while we are giving this man time, what are we doing with the coaches that we have within Nigeria? Like they say, we've not had any CAF coaching certification courses over the last many years. They've held one CAF C coaching class. We need Coach B, CAF A, as well as CAF Pro coaching classes to upskill the coaches that we have within. And if we're not developing those who we have, then we'll continue to be looking for potentials around the continent and around the world. But will his style fit the players that we have? Yes, because he's moved Mali up a step. We want to move up a step. We have the players. He likes to attack. Let him go out there, show us what he can do. You can't ask somebody to show us what he can do if you're tying one hand behind his back.
I don't know what you're measuring that by. Moving Mali up a step, is it because they were able to defeat Nigeria that one time, or are they other?
No,
not to the quarterfinals
because they moved from not being able to qualify for the quarterfinals in the past 10 years to falling at the group stage and the round of 16. They've moved up to now qualifying for the round of for the quarterfinals. Beating Nigeria is not something that's we should use as a yardstick. Otherwise, we would have employed the coach of Central African Republic, we would have employed the coach of many other countries that have beaten Nigeria in the past 5 years.
So thank you very much for that note. So based on this now, looking at him being the coach of Mali and him moving them up a step, let's note that Nigeria also has a very, very wide array of people that could have been the coach or could have been, well, we had one instance with Guavon and all the frustrations that came with that one. What's the problem with a Nigerian coach, first off? And also, and I'm going to direct this one to Chukwudi, who's here in the studio with us. Note that from 1981, the coaches that we have had have lasted for years. They lasted for, at least in the beginning, 4 years at a time sometimes. And this gave them a coach-player type of bond, a coach-player type of relationship. Also, it enabled them work out strategies that were winning systems. But if you start to look from late 90s all the way down, they only lasted for a year or maybe even 6 months. Recently, just 2 or 3 months. Now, Chukwudi, what's responsible and how does this affect our national gameplay?
So I think that, you know, in this age and time, you have more Nigerian professionals doing well in big clubs across Europe, and people expect more. But in the past, you know, we had players who you featured in great clubs, but you would not compare them to the club sides that we have our professionals today. For example, you have Victor Osimhen, you know, who until the move to Galatasaray was playing for Napoli, did a lot to help them win the title. You have Ademola Lookman for Atalanta. You have Victor Boniface for Leverkusen, doing well in the Bundesliga. So we look at these players playing week in, week out for these clubs. And then we want them to translate that performance when they feature for the Super Eagles of Nigeria. But unfortunately, we don't get to see that. And now, a lot of Nigerians are worried because when you look at the quality of players and then you see that we are not even featuring in, you know, big competitions, you become worried and say, what exactly are the issues? I think that the NFF should have a strategy, and that's what we do not have now. In the past, they would say, okay, let's look at 2 competitions and get you to, you know, take us to maybe the semi-finals or see what we can do. But now it's just essentially how much, who are we paying, how much do we have? You have situations where you cannot even pay the manager for months, and it becomes a scandal. It's really very, very embarrassing that you have to deal with such situations. And so you go for just about anybody. For me, I feel if we find ourselves in this situation and we do not have monies to pay certain people, I mean, you have Hervé Renard, who has done well with African teams on the continent. If we cannot pay that person, let's settle, and it's not, you know, I mean, no disrespect to say, let's just settle for a Nigerian coach. Let us decide that we are going to spend 10 years developing our football and get a manager who would, you know, try his best to see what we can do before we proceed. In the 10 years, I'm sure he must have, you know, gained experience, bonded with the players, and when we say, okay, in 2028, for example, or in 2030, for example, this is your target, we would know that we have given you ample time to prepare, and we're sure that you will do great.
All right, Dafe, let me ask you this, because Osman Material really set the tone for my next question about, you know, the quality of our team and the quality of our players, and the immediate challenge that we are facing now. You know, Eric is coming. Coach Eric is going to come and inherit a problem, right? And there seems to be something inherently wrong with the team, right? And it's clear that it's not the quality of players. So what exactly is the issue? Is it that there's a lack of patriotism? Is it that they are tired from playing at the international level? Is it that the style of coaching from, you know, their different coaches coming into local? What exactly is it? And what then should be the best strategy for Eric to, you know, adopt in at least meeting the immediate goals for Super Eagles and for the nation?
I think, like Osman Material has said, you can't expect a player to just translate coaching from their club to the national team. They have to be given clear targets on the pitch. These players come in, sometimes for the first time. We have players who they call up for the first time. They are put in the national team with, I would say, minimal instructions, if you like. We've heard about coaches that will say, go and show us what you can do on the pitch. or we have one style of playing. It's when our backs are against the wall, it's difficult to adjust our tactics. We either go out there, is it 4-2-3-1 or is it 4-3-3? And then once we find that we're behind, then sometimes the players are like rabbits in headlights, looking to the bench for instruction. What do we do now? How do we change? How do we move? Pesero came in, and when we got to the last AFCON, he actually changed it to 5 at the back, so that there's a solid defensive line, if you like, and then catch the teams on the break. But you can't fit square pegs into round holes. If the base is not solid, if we are not stable with the NFF, if we know that this coach may not even be here next month, talk less next year, then how are the players going to give the coach their best? Yes, when the players come into the camp, when they're playing for the national team, we expect them to do their best. But when you look at the management structure, when we know that if you don't give this performance today, or you don't get this result today, you're putting them under a lot of pressure. And a lot of them, let's be honest, their money doesn't come from playing for Nigeria. What comes from playing for Nigeria is one, the prestige, two, career prospects, because other clubs will see what they do for Nigeria and decide, right, this is the type of player that we get. Their daily bread comes from their clubs. It's the clubs that actually pay them. And one, they don't want to get injured playing in a way that they've not been told to. And number two, it's about just putting that foundation in. If the foundation is not in, if there isn't a solid base, then what are they standing on?
I guess it's just exactly what Judith said. I mean, patriotism. I don't want to get injured for Nigeria, but I will get injured for I'll do all it takes for my foreign team. So that's one thing to look at. But let's also take a look at Eric's managerial record. When he was with US Boulogne, that ended poorly. That didn't go very nicely. Had 3 points out of 10 games. And then I think not qualifying Mali, or rather qualifying Mali, but not finalizing by beating Madagascar was another poor status by him. Now, when you look at this, does it seem like this is the man that we actually need for the Super Eagles? Chukwudi, please.
I disagree. I don't think he's the one we need for the Super Eagles. I think if the NFF is trying to stabilize the situation, good for us, because you have to pay the manager. But I would have preferred if we maybe retained, Coach Augustine Iguavon or even Emmanuel Amunike. But like he has said, it's important that we invest in our indigenous coaches, get them to get the experience. Some have gone out and done well for themselves. But I think that, as a nation that, takes pride in the quality. I mean, week in, week out, you see how Nigerians are excited about, our boys and the ladies who do us proud outside the shores of this country. We must invest in football. And it's important that we, have a plan. I am up for a plan, even if it's a 10-year plan. You look at the Indigenous League and talk about investing in our league so that our players can develop. I mean, South Africa is doing, and they're doing well. South Africa currently is second on the log in Group C, and Nigeria is in 5th position.
I mean, isn't that what the whole problem is? Right? From before, we used to invest in our local teams, our local league, and then you would see them rise into our national team.
Yes.
But we don't see that happening anymore. Instead, we go for the high-hanging fruit, try to bring them down into Nigeria to play for.
I also do not think that it is problematic if you get guys who are doing well abroad. But I think that you must have a plan.
The base.
We used to have Principal Cup, we used to have Shell Cup, and somebody like, Mathematical Sheikh Wadegbami, went from playing at the grassroots to, being a very instrumental figure in the Green Eagles. So I think we can still have that plan. It's all politics now. You have people who, try to become...
want to bring up NFF. You're trying to bring up NFF.
Yes, but that's what it is now. We had somebody who presided over the administrative affairs of NFF saying, just think about it. why will Nigeria not qualify for the World Cup? What do you mean just think about it?
I'm glad you're bringing this thing up, because I want to talk to Dafe about this. And it's our lack of patience, especially as fans and Nigerians.
Fire him.
We are so impatient when it comes to results, and we want the results right now. And I have a theory, and I think that it is because of our past glory from 1994 to the 1996 group and 1997, and all of the things that we did during the Atlanta 1994, I think was 6. We want that same esteem, that same glory, that same feeling, that same victory, but we do not understand that things like that may take time, or it's just to get back to that point, we need the growth. Can Nigeria, whether it's the NFF, whether it's the fans, whether it's the compatriots, can they be patient for Eric to do his job?
I laugh.
I think you can only be patient when there is a clear plan. You can't just ask somebody to be patient, I'm coming, and then you have no roadmap, you have no plan, you're jumping from one frying pan to the other, you haven't even entered the fire yet. When we look at our successes, we won the Nations Cup 3 times. We won it in 1980, we won it in 94, and we won it in 2013. There is at least 10 years between each of our victory in AFCON. 10 to 15 years. Now, since the last time we won it, it's now 11 years. No, it's 11 or 20. My maths is not good, but we haven't won it for at least 10 years. And when we look at how we are going, with 4 or 5 coaches within 4 years, that is not the stability that is required. You need to plan, you need to build up your team. When we look at the current Super Eagles is built on former youth players. We won the Under-17 World Cup in 2013, we won it in 2015, and a lot of our players have come from there. You'll find that at least, I know a lot of people say we go to Europe to look for players to put into the team, but at least half of our current squad are age grade footballers. When you look at the likes of Moses Simon, he played age grade football for Nigeria. You look at the likes of Michael, even though he didn't win the World Cup, he was there under 17. I think it was 2009. The likes of Kelechi Iheanacho, the likes of Wilfred Ndidi, the likes of Osimhen, they are all former youth players, and it's been a progression for them into the seniority of the Super Eagles. Now, when we look at what have these youth teams actually done since 2015, they've come nowhere near as accomplished as their predecessors or the senior boys in the national team now. So where are we going to get these young players who are hungry, these young players who want to do well? If you don't have a foundation, if it's not stable, you can't just keep plucking players from here, there, and everywhere, or trying to convince players to switch allegiance, because a lot of players they want to play for the best team. And if Nigeria cannot show that we are the best now, we're not going to recruit the best. And the alternative, fix your youth football, fix the foundation, if you like. And we're struggling seriously with our base.
Right.
Real quick. Oh, Judith, you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to ask about, the strategies we've been talking about, and, and the plan and all of that. Well, there's one person that can only make this thing happen, or one body that can make it happen, and that's the NFF, right? And are they ready to provide the resources? I mean, because there was a time we're talking about salary not being paid or allowances not being paid. Are they ready to also hold their own end of the bargain? Because as I say it in local parlance, scratch my hand, I scratch your hand, or scratch my back, I scratch your back. Can they do that, to ensure that this new administration or this new dispensation is provided for, and all he needs is provided for the betterment of the club or for the team?
I think it's important to say this is what we hope to achieve with the appointment of Coach Eric. If we have that in mind, then we would know where to begin to build from. Because, I mean, if we cannot afford to pay certain people, and we have looked at a manager and we say we can afford to pay this manager, it's fine. But you must have a proper plan. And that plan would enable you go back and say, in 6 months, in 1 year, what have we achieved? Because the truth is, in this age and time, you don't even get to see these international games as frequently as we used to in the past. Now, the friendly games have been replaced by the Nations League in Europe. So you cannot even get grade A teams to play against. Now, what we must do is say, after 1 year, after 2 years, what have we done? How do we deal with the problems that have persisted? And so, in the next competition, what are we looking to achieve? You cannot blame us.
So I see you laying down the timeline, but what exactly is the benchmark? After 1 year, after 2 years, what do you want? What should we be expecting of Eric? What should we say we want to have qualified for what? Or want to have gotten to second or third place? Or we want to have won the World Cup?
Looking at the quality of players, I would want the Super Eagles of Nigeria to do really well at the next edition of the Nations Cup.
What is really well?
Win the trophy.
Win the trophy.
Yes.
Now, if they don't win, then we fire him, yeah?
No, not fire him.
Isn't that what we always do?
Not fire him. Not fire him. We go back and look at the challenges, because if you get to the finals of the Nations Cup, looking at the quality of teams, when you consider certain African teams as favorites to win the World Cup, to win the Nations Cup, if you get to the finals, it means you to a considerable degree you did well. So we can go back and consolidate on our gains. The problem is always going back to square one.
Okay.
When we can consolidate from maybe 40
consolidate
to 50.
on failure,
exactly.
which is not a bad thing.
Consolidate on what's on ground. I mean, lastly, finally, just it's a yes or no question. Dafe, is Eric Chelle the right choice for Super Eagles at where they are at this stage of their football? Yes or no?
I'll say yes, because that's who we can afford. If we can't afford the best, then it's what money you carry to the market that will determine what you buy.
Affordability becomes desirable.
And how's the material? Did you cut our quotes according to the material?
Yes, I agree. And because we're not qualifying for the World Cup.
That's what you said when you walked in.
I'm not trying to be a doomsday prophet. We're in a very bad place. We're currently 5th position. You have Zimbabwe. Nobody even knows Zimbabwe for playing football. Lesotho, ahead of the Super Eagles of Nigeria. You have 3 teams on 7 points, 1 team on 5 points, and we are on 3 points after 4 games. And we still have to travel to South Africa to play against them. So what we should ask Nigerians, please, zero your mind.
Well, listen,
if we do not qualify for the World Cup, don't complain, don't cry.
Place fifth on the board there. Hey, but gentlemen, many thanks for doing this with us. Dafe, Otite, as well as Ezugwu, Chukwudi, both gentlemen, football analysts. Ezugwu, Chukwudi, both gentlemen, football analysts, just giving us a bit of insight on the new appointment of Eric Chelle. It now marks a new chapter for the Super Eagles. Whether it will be one of triumph or turbulence, only time will tell. Well, Nigerians will be watching.
What a way to round up. Thank you very much,
gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.